Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show, we do it every single day. It is what we do to try and break down the actual day in sports. No matter what we do, we always like to end the day on the right way. And, of course, we had the first week of OTAs for the Steelers. Lots to get to with the Steelers. A lot of different issues when it comes to the Steelers. One, however, that seems to have captured the attention of pretty much everybody today is yet another one of those things that sort of make you go, what? and then you say to yourself, wait, what? And that, of course, is that the Steelers, in desperate need of a second receiver, playmaker, whatever you want to call it, right? They are basically in a place where they are looking at one. They're looking at a playmaker to add for whoever the quarterback is. They're looking for somebody to bring in that apparently Arthur Smith loves. But he's a tight end. He's not a receiver. He's a tight end. Jonnu Smith. The Dolphins and Steelers apparently have had some sort of discussion about bringing him in. He is basically trying to rework his deal. The Dolphins, I think, are basically like saying, no, we're not going to have that. We're not doing that. So now he's on the market. Apparently, they have at least talked to the Steelers. Now, I don't understand this move at all. For one thing, you've got Pat Freiermuth, you've got Darnell Washington. I understand the whole Arthur Smith is in love with all of his tight ends. He loves tight ends. He loves to have them in his offense. His offenses are, 2, 3, 4 tight ends. He loves to use as many tight ends as he possibly can. I get it. But I just don't know, honestly, if this is the way you go about business. I really don't. Because I feel like bringing in a guy like him doesn't solve your problem. And I think we saw last week, last season, that this idea that you can load up with tight ends and this offense is going to be magical with all these tight ends, I just don't get it. I really don't. I don't understand how in the world this makes them better. Now, this is nothing against Jonnu Smith. I think he's a good enough player that, you get something out of him, I guess. But does he solve your problem? That's what I would tell you. Does he solve your problem? Last year with the Dolphins, he did have 88 receptions for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns. We all know about his, ability to play. He's a little bit of a playmaker from the tight end spot. I understand it. I really do. But by the same token, I don't really think it makes a lot of sense. And so to me, when you look at what they have at tight end, if you're Arthur Smith and you want to sort of add on to, the idea that we have basically need to have more tight ends, then guess what? I would tell you this. If that's the case, if you need to have more tight ends, go get one in free agency. Don't trade for one. And especially not trading for one that, in my mind, doesn't necessarily really, solve your problems completely. If the idea is you want to have more tight ends because you've got, we have a 2 tight end offense and we need blocking and we need this. I don't know if I go this route, to be honest. If they're going to make a trade for somebody, they should trade for a receiver. Period. They should trade for a receiver and then worry about, maybe we can add another tight end down the road. Once we get into training camp and guys start getting cut, and even after June 1st, when some of these high-priced guys maybe get cut or whatever, or get put on the market. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go about getting another tight end. You already got a pretty good one in Pat Freiermuth. I think Darnell Washington is fine as your second tight end. I'm just dumbfounded that this is what they would do. So to me, it sounds like the Dolphins were basically, here's what I predict. They're going to rework the deal because it sounds like Smith wants to stay with the Dolphins. It sounds like, he wants to stay with the Dolphins and he wants to, rework his deal. It sounds like the Dolphins maybe were looking for a little bit of leverage and basically said, oh, well, hey, you know what? You want to do that? We'll put you on the market. I don't know. That's just my thing. But I'm just not a big fan of this move if they make it. Now, one thing that hit the airwaves, I think it was yesterday or the day before that I really haven't gotten to, was Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw, who is obviously, no less than the second best quarterback the Steelers have ever had. He's obviously, in my mind, number one, because he's got 4 titles and the other guy's got 2. But let me just say this. You could make an argument that it's a different era and free agency and, Bradshaw, was kind of carried the first 2 Super Bowls. I would listen to the argument, but I don't know that I really buy it. I think Terry Bradshaw is obviously, in my mind, the greatest quarterback in Steelers history. And therefore, when he says something, you kind of have to listen to it, even though in recent years, he's sort of become just a crotchety guy. And I think in some ways he might even, have gotten hit on the head a few too many times because he just says some crazy things. But one of the things that he said was that if you look at what the Steelers did with Kenny Pickett, it was basically malpractice. That basically when they drafted Kenny Pickett, they should have committed to making him their guy. And that's, what he basically said. Here's his exact quote. I liked Kenny Pickett. And this was on the Buzz Morning Mayhem or whatever that show is. I don't even know what that is, but whatever. I liked Kenny Pickett. I liked him at Pitt. I know him. I know what he's like. And when they got him to Pittsburgh, here's what they didn't do. They didn't protect him. They didn't get him an offensive line. They wanted to run the football, but they didn't have the offensive line. They couldn't protect, and they didn't have the weapons. He had no receivers to speak of. And then you throw a kid in there for 2 years, and you got an offense that doesn't fit and doesn't work. And they can't run because their offensive line's not even good enough for a run-blocking team. Pickett wasn't a failure. The Steelers were a failure. Now, I've heard people give this as their commentary about Kenny Pickett, that he didn't really get a fair chance with the Steelers, that he, probably they should have stuck with him more, that he probably, if you're going to draft him in the first round, they should have done a better job of, protecting him. They should have done a better job of, making sure they had weapons around him. They should have done a better job of, producing a quarterback from a young guy who was trying to learn. I can get with that a little bit because I think the Steelers probably did pull the trigger a little bit early. By the same token, when they brought in Russell Wilson, he wanted to go. He wanted to leave. And I think that the bottom line is, if you look at Kenny Pickett, when they traded him, he's going to have a chance to redeem himself. That's the beauty of all this. He's going to have a chance to redeem himself because now he's going to be the starter in Cleveland. And, they have a team that I wouldn't call it the greatest team on the planet, but I do think they are going to be a team that actually, if they get good quarterback play, they could have a chance to be decent. And if he's able to lead them to like 9 or 10 wins, you know what? All of a sudden, you take a look at what happened and say to yourself, wow, maybe the Steelers did screw up. But, you know, I do think when you look at what they have around them, you know, they've got some guys that are reasonably good in terms of their weapons. Njoku, they have Jerry Jeudy. You know, they also have a reasonably good offensive line. So he'll have a chance. He is probably going to have a chance. And if he does, and he produces something really good and really big, guess what? Then all of a sudden, you can come back and say that. Wow, here we are. Wow, Steelers did screw up. I mean, God forbid, how about this? God forbid if he leads them to the playoffs or he leads them to where they finish ahead of the Steelers in the standings. Then what? That's what I would tell you. To me, one of those things is it's so important that he redeems himself, period. And they've got to do it in a way where, I mean, the Browns, they've got to do it in a way where Kenny Pickett isn't just along for the ride. And if he's not just along for the ride and he's able to redeem himself, well, then we could actually probably have a discussion where we say, okay, maybe the Steelers could have done some things differently. By the same token, it is going to be really, 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 really hard for me to believe that was the issue when it comes to Kenny Pickett. Honestly, I just think that he's a guy who's probably destined to be a very mediocre quarterback. I think he's a good story. I think he's a hard worker. I think he's a guy who probably projects as a game manager at best. Period. And I think that, to be honest, if he's a game manager at best, then the Steelers were good and right to cut bait as soon as they could. Period. So I think that, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, this thing with Kenny Pickett, Terry Bradshaw, I don't really necessarily agree 100% with him that the Steelers failed. I think he's got to show the Steelers failed. And the only way he can do that is by playing really well. And if he doesn't play really well, then what are we going to talk about? If he loses his job to one of the two rookies or, God forbid, the 90-year-old guy they have on that roster, what are we really talking about? And that's where I'll tell you, I think we're really, it's just kind of a difficult thing for me because I look at a guy, I see a game manager. I see somebody who, you know, at best is I mean, is he even as good as Mason Rudolph is a good question. I could be wrong. But again, I get skeptical of any guy that, in my mind, you know, took to his 5th year to figure it out. That ain't good. Took to his 5th year to figure it out. So to me, when we look at it from that standpoint, I think Kenny Pickett is going to be a guy who maybe leads the Cleveland Browns to like an 8 wins or 7 or 8 wins, if he even lasts the whole season as a starter. I could be wrong. Kevin Stefanski's talking about him as if he's Dan Marino. You know, if you listen to the stuff that they're talking about with Kenny Pickett, I mean, it sounds to me like he might actually, he might actually take over for Mahomes as the best quarterback in the league if you listen to Kevin Stefanski talk about it. But I'm going to reserve judgment to Sundays in the fall as opposed to OTAs, which nobody cares about OTAs, period. The other thing Terry Bradshaw said, which I found very, very interesting, is that he does not like the fact that Aaron Rodgers might be a Steeler. In fact, he had some really pointed criticism for the Steelers because he said, that's a joke. That is just a joke to me. What are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? That guy needs to stay in California. Go somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a little bit over the top. But when he says, what are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Yeah, that's the plan. Bring him in for 1 year. That's exactly the plan. That's what you do with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. You bring him in for a year. He's your bridge quarterback. And then you hopefully have a plan going forward. The problem the Steelers have is they have no plan going forward. And I think most people would be willing to accept anything else that comes down the pike from the standpoint of, you know what, if it has to be a bridge quarterback, that's fine. But we need to know what the plan is. Most Steeler fans are just sort of upset because there doesn't seem to be a plan, period. And so I feel like it is always going to be, one of these things where it just kind of is really, really difficult in so many ways. It's just really, really difficult to note that there's no plan. And I think that's what people are talking about, honestly. That's what people are talking about, in my mind at least. They're talking about the fact that it is really, really, really difficult, in my mind, for people to fathom the fact that there just doesn't seem to be a plan. And I feel like that's the question or whatever that you should be asking. If you're Terry Bradshaw, you've got to know they probably don't have a plan, which is why they're going with Aaron Rodgers for a year. And if they get him for a year, they hope that they can, milk whatever he's got left for 1 year. And then going forward, who's your quarterback next year? Now they've basically, by getting Aaron Rodgers, you basically have kicked it down kicked the can down the road another year. But sooner or later, you know what? You're going to get run out of reclamation projects and old guys and veteran guys that are on the market. You're going to run out of those guys. And when you run out of those guys, what's going to happen? So I feel like it's important, really. I feel like it's important, really, to understand that Terry Bradshaw, I understand why people don't want Aaron Rodgers. I've said it a million times. I understand why people don't want Aaron Rodgers because it feels like, oh, well, this is just sort of a quick fix or whatever. But the reality is it's their only option outside of Mason Rudolph right now. And I think most people are angry about the fact that there's no plan. Like, if I told you, listen, they're going to use Aaron Rodgers, if I told you definitively, they're going to use Aaron Rodgers this year, and then next year, they're going to use all those picks they have, those comp picks and all the other stuff they have, they're going to use those picks to trade up to get into the top five to draft their quarterback for the future. Most people probably would sign up for that. There are some people who, still have this idea about Will Howard. It seems like a pipe dream, doesn't it? Maybe give the kid a chance. I don't know. But I have a hard time believing when you read why he was drafted late, because there's some measurables and there's some, issues about his actual arm talent. Being a gritty, tough, hard-nosed kid that finds ways to win works at Ohio State when you've got 96 other first round picks around you, and you're playing in the Big Ten. It works, but in the NFL, everybody's good, and so you better have arm talent. You better have some ability, that goes above and beyond just sort of being a really good college quarterback. I think that's the key to me. I'm not saying he can't get it done, but I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream. And if you listen to some people, I mean, Will Howard is the second coming of Joe Montana. And I'm like, really? I'm just saying it's got to be really, really hard if you're the Steelers. And this goes to show you, and I mean this in all sincerity, this goes to show you, okay, why it's so imperative and so hard, but it's so imperative and why so many teams will do whatever they can do to go try and find a franchise quarterback. You want to know why guys like Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, you want to know why these guys all get, 50, 55, $60 million? You want to know why? Because teams are so desperate to have that quarterback who is a franchise guy. That's what they really are looking for. And they're all starved for it. And the reason is because if you look at what's going on with the Steelers, nobody wants to be in this cycle. I mean, to be honest, if you think about it, the Dolphins have been in this cycle since Dan Marino left. I mean, there's some people maybe that are convinced that Tua, I'm not convinced that Tua is the guy. They've been looking for their franchise guy. They've been looking for their guy to get them to the playoffs. They've been looking for the guy to win playoff games since Dan Marino. Think about that. The same can be said about the Bills after Jim Kelly until they found Josh Allen. Honestly. And so I'm like, really, it's important, really, to me, in my mind. That's why teams angle so much and pay so much to try and figure out how much and who is going to get paid when it comes to quarterbacks. Guys that we say, wait, you're going to give that guy $45 million? Daniel Jones, you're going to give that guy $45 million? Yeah, because the Giants thought maybe he's our guy. And we're going to lock him up. And so that's where it is to me, I would say. I mean, at least, you've got to be able to figure out a way to find new ideas on how to come up with a quarterback. That's the big thing. Now then, let's move on. By the way, game's always on at Archie's. Archie's home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. Home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. Look, I know we are all looking for some semblance of hope when it comes to the Pirates. I get it. And if there's a little bit of a life, people go way overboard and go crazy. And the bottom line to me, they scored 19 runs in their last two games against Arizona, okay? People are talking about Henry Davis, because he's had a couple of pretty decent days, okay? But at the end of the day, when you look at Henry Davis's season, he's got a long way to go before we are ready to anoint him anything. He's played in 20 games, which, obviously it's not a huge sample size. He's got 2 home runs and 7 RBI. His slash line is 222, 300, 352. His OPS is under 700. If he continues to do what he's done the last few days, starts to put together, streaks, starts to look like the guy that they drafted 1-1, I might get more excited, but I'm not ready to get excited yet. It's just one of those things where, we do this dance all the time. Pirates could lose 20 games in a row and look horrible doing it, but if they won 3 in a row, there would be people that would start to say, you see, Here it comes. It's happening. Here he is. And Henry Davis is just sort of the latest example. Now, Joe Starkey wrote a column the other day where he basically said he's earned the right to be the starting catcher every day, right? Okay, how about this? I don't think he needed to earn anything. I think the Pirates should make him the starting catcher every day to figure out if they have a catcher. Because they have no idea what he is. Could he catch long term? Maybe. Maybe not. Is he going to hit? Well, he's hit pretty much everywhere he's gone. But by the same token, hasn't hit here. So I'm just telling you, if the Pirates, we talked about the Steelers plan. If the Pirates want to have a plan, here's the plan. Put Henry Davis back behind home plate and say, you're going to catch 6 out of 7 days. We'll give you the 7th day off. And we're going to see in 3 months what you're doing. And if he's still hitting 214 or whatever and hasn't shown any growth at all, then you kind of know maybe it's time to sort of move on from Henry Davis. But you drafted him 1-1. And your handling of him has been abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. And so to me, it's not about him earning the right or whatever, Joe Stark. I'm not picking on Joe Stark. I'm just saying. He said he earned the right. I don't even know he has to earn the right. The Pirates, is he your guy or is he not? Is he your guy or is he not? That's all. And if he's not, then you need to move on from him. And I think that's the thing that really we have to look at because it's one of those situations where this season is lost, okay? This season is lost. And so if that's the case, they better find out about guys like Henry Davis this year. And that's what is going on, right? So here it is. You're looking at it and you're saying, make him our guy. So let's see. We have a story in the Post-Gazette today about who is possibly going to be the next Penguins coach. There's 4 guys that apparently seem to be in the mix. Mitch Love, Jay Woodcroft, right? DJ Smith. Okay. So there you have that group. And so that basically, David Quinn, basically that group of 4. And now they're kind of down to their final interviews. What's interesting is nobody seems to know if these are the final interviews or the final guys. That's the biggest thing. It kind of makes me laugh. If you believe Dan Kongursky, which there's no reason not to, he thinks that the guy is probably going to be, here we go, Hershey Bears coach Todd Nelson. Obviously, he's a guy who is since he's in the Bears organization, he's with the Bears. He's a guy that develops young talent. I don't know. Is it him? This all should come to a head within the next week, I think, because they do have their final interviews. But it's amazing if you read 10 different stories on this, right? If you met 10 different stories on this, you'll get 10 different answers as to who is in first place or who is in the driver's seat for the job, which tells me these guys really, really, in some ways, are still just kind of guessing. At any rate, hopefully you all have a good day, a good weekend. Hopefully by Monday when we're back, there'll be more to talk about with respect to Aaron Rodgers and everything else. Till then, Enjoy your day.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.